Have you ever just felt your mind wandering and you have to like reread a page of a book or even maybe a whole chapter? Me too. And I just feel like it happens to a lot of us. So I thought it would be something interesting to discuss. So, hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. And hi if you're new here, I'm Jade. And yeah, I have just found lately, I think because I've been quite busy and overwhelmed, that I have been struggling to focus a little bit with reading, and I started to think of like what helps me focus, and I thought I could make like an interesting video. ADHD is on the rise, like diagnosed, and while some of us might not be to a level of diagnosis, I do think that the modern world has a lot of distractions, and therefore I feel like we can all benefit from having like tips and ways that help us keep focused. And obviously these are going to be specific to reading and books, and it might overlap a little bit with my reading slump video, but it's going to be slightly different. So please stick around, even if you've seen that one. And yeah, I'm going to give you my top 5 tips of things that help me focus. So tip number 1 is ask yourself why you are reading. This might sound really random, and it's not exactly a tip to really help keep you focused, but have a goal with your reading in terms of, are you reading because you need to read something? Are you at university? Have you been told you have to read something? Is it to learn? Or are you reading for escapism and fun? Maybe you are just trying to switch your brain off after a busy day. So ask yourself why you are reading, because I do think that affects how we focus and what's going to help us focus. Because unfortunately, if it is like assigned reading slash something you really want to learn, so you kind of have to read it, obviously it might not be our first choice of book, and therefore it can be a little bit harder to get into. And if you are reading for fun, honestly, if you're struggling with a book and you're finding it boring and that's why you're struggling to keep reading, DNF it. Honestly, do it. That sounds rich coming from me because I do not DNF books very, very often at all. I am quite stubborn, and maybe you're like me, but honestly, there are a few books this year that I'm like, why did I bother? Why did I waste my time? I was reading for fun. I wasn't getting any fun out of reading it. So like, why did I keep reading? So yeah, tip number 1, know why you're reading, because otherwise the rest of the tips just don't work as successfully. So tip number 2 is to create the right environment for reading for you. I think this differs for everyone a little bit. Like, I personally prefer silence when I read, but I know there's a lot of people that like background music or some kind of white noise. So know what works best for you and make sure you have that. If you are struggling to stay focused, the environment is the first thing to tackle. Is it the ideal environment for you to read? If not, you're already like fighting a losing battle. So yeah, for me, I just love silence, and I like a nice clear space. I don't want too much clutter. And I don't mean clutter as in like, oh, it's a busy room but well decorated. I just mean I don't want like mess and untidiness or something that's going to distract me where I'm like, oh, I'm reading, but I could be tidying. Or, I like a nice, clean, ready environment, which is quiet for me. That's my best way of reading. I also, in the summer, I do quite enjoy reading in a park, as long as it's not a too high traffic area, like where people are walking by me every 2 seconds. But if I can find like a nice quiet spot in a park, I do like reading outside or even reading in my garden, as long as like, all the neighbors aren't outside or something. So just know what makes you feel comfortable when you read, because it's probably the easiest thing for you to fix. Of course, if you're traveling, this could be a bit of an issue that you can't really avoid. But for me personally, I just can't focus on books when I'm traveling in the same way that I can at home, where I can control my environment. Okay, my third tip is to manage your goals with reading. Set obtainable goals that you can work towards and maybe build. So, like, build your focus gradually. Don't expect it to just happen. So, one example is you could always say, I'm going to do 10 minutes a day. If that's all you can focus for, do it. Start with these very small increments, just 10, 15 minutes of reading a day, or even less than that if you need to. A page, a chapter, rather than set it by time, you can set it by amount of the book you're going to read. So pages, chapters, have those goals. Start small if you're struggling to focus. And then if you start finding yourself getting into it, maybe build a little bit each day. There is something called the Pomodoro method. I can't say I've personally tried it, but maybe that would be a good video for the future where I can try it and see how successful it is for me. But the Pomodoro method is where you read for 25 minutes and then you take a 5-minute break. So basically, in each 30 minutes, you've had a 5-minute break and you've read for 25 minutes. I think 25 minutes of solid reading is quite a lot if you're really struggling to focus. But if you're someone that can sort of focus, but you struggle for a long time, maybe this is a good way of like breaking it up and having those 5 minute like gaps in the middle. So yeah, that's definitely something to look into. As I said, I haven't personally tried it, but I know a lot of people recommend the Pomodoro method. So yeah, like I said, maybe I'll try it soon and we can see how it works. Okay, my fourth tip is to manage your mental distractions and also do not punish yourself if you find your mind wandering. Like I said, it does happen to the best of us. The modern world has so many distractions. We're constantly surrounded by information, information, information. I feel like our brains get a little bit overloaded. We constantly see things on our phone, etc. So manage those distractions. If it helps, put your phone in another room. Keep it on silent. Don't let it distract you. This can be tricky, especially if you're reading like a more difficult book where you think you might Google things, because I know I have done that in the past. And then I'll start Googling for the book and then I'll just start scrolling, which is terrible. So I am better if I keep my phone away from me so that I don't reach for it. Like often I'll get to the end of a chapter and I'm just like, oh, I'll just check my phone. Why am I doing that? I don't need to do that, unless I'm actually waiting for something. So yeah, I feel like removing your phone can be really good. If your phone isn't a distraction for you, you're good. But that's just an example. Maybe you're just someone that your mind just wanders off anyway. This happens to me sometimes, especially if I've got a lot on my mind, if I've got a lot of things coming up, I'll start finding I'm thinking about them rather than reading the words on the page. And that's where I end up going back and I'm like, oh, I better reread that part, which is kind of annoying and takes forever to finish a book. So if you catch your mind wandering, take a pause, take a breath, take a moment. Don't feel bad that you've done that. Everyone does at times. But just let yourself breathe, refocus, and get back into the book. So just take a moment for yourself. Just embrace that it can happen, that we lose our focus, and then slowly get back into it. Because I think if you stress about not being able to focus, it becomes a lot worse. And if you're someone who often finds their mind wandering, but it's about things that they're suddenly like, oh, I need to remember this, maybe when you're reading, like keep a notepad nearby so you can jot something down like, oh yeah, I need to remember to do this. So then you're not constantly thinking about it, because I feel like until you get it put in words, your brain's going to keep thinking about it and then you're not focused on what you're actually reading. So that's just another quick little tip. And my final tip number 5, is to turn your reading into a habit. So what I mean by this is probably like reading the same time every day. If it's possible, I know there are times like with work, especially if you do shift work, anything like that, where it's just not possible. But like for me, for example, I try to read even just 10 minutes in the morning just to get like a little bit out there. My mornings are usually where I'm most productive physically, so I do a lot of more like cleaning, etc. I tend to work mainly in the afternoons and the evenings. Hence, I try to get a bit of reading done in the morning as well. Because I'm a private teacher, I tend to read in between clients. So my time can be a little bit more flexible, but it's more like a habit of, oh, I have an hour gap between clients. Let's get out my book. So it's still a habit, even if it's a slightly different time of day for me. There's also obviously a really good one, reading before you go to bed. I try to read a chapter in bed every night. So that's another habit. So I know if I've had a busy day, I'm at least getting my chapter done for the day, and it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I've made progress, and I feel like even if I'm really tired, it does settle me to go to sleep. It's much better than scrolling on my phone. I sleep much better if I have read a chapter in my book, and I've noticed this. So yeah, I feel like that's a good habit. But if you're someone that just doesn't like reading before bed, come up with those times a day where you feel like, yes, I can get into my book then. Or as I said, if it can't be at an exact time, maybe a moment of your day. So for me, in between clients, and just focus on that. Try and get a routine with your reading. Also with the habits, you can sort of have a bit of a ritual with it. So do you always have your favorite cup of tea, cup of coffee when you settle down to read your book? Do you always have a favorite cozy blanket that you use? Anything like this that you kind of then begin to associate with reading, I think helps you focus, because your brain starts to be like, yep, we're in reading mode now because this has happened. So, A plus B happens, which equals C, reading. I hope listening to my 5 main tips has helped you a little bit get thinking about what might help you focus. And if you are someone that has struggled and found things that work for you, please let me know what is your favorite tip to help you focus on a book. Because like I said, I think this modern world is just full of distractions, and we're so used to like immediate information that our brain is all over the place and it is really, really hard to just focus in on one bit. Like for me, when a book gets to a really gripping part, maybe it's easier, but for the rest, especially when starting a new book and getting used to new characters, I can find it particularly difficult to focus. So I think having these sort of tips really helps. Like for me, having that environment, having those regular time a day where I know I'm just going to pick up my book really helps. Let me know what works for you, and I will see you again real soon. Bye.